Before we start the music, can you just introduce yourself?
What's up? This is Amir Questlove Thompson.
Welcome to the Trackstar HQ, world headquarters.
Very honored to be here.
Yeah.
I made it.
Finally. I feel like this has been such a long time coming.
I knew it was coming eventually. I don't want to press it.
So this is the plan. You have a film coming out.
Indeed, I do.
Probably by the time this comes out. It's already out. Go
It'll
watch
out.
it right now.
It's a
about
hit.
Earth,
Yes.
Wind, and Fire.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that movie. We're going to listen to some songs.
Okay.
And then for the second half, we'll hit the streets. And we'll put you to the test, and we'll play a bunch of stuff.
I'm ready.
I know you're ready.
Dun, 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 dun.
You know how long people have been saying, like, you got to have Questlove. Like, he's, like, not going to be stumpable.
This is the show I dreamt about, coming on, so I'm glad to be here.
To kick this conversation off, I just want to start with...
Yeah.
That's at the beginning of the film, right?
Yeah, I used...
There's a little teaser.
I used a teaser of Badia because I believe it was Philip that told me that, I asked him, like, the word Badia and Bop 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 are in many an Earth, Wind, and Fire song, and what does that mean exactly? And he told me that, them being heavily influenced by Brazilian music, especially the work of Sergio Mendes, and them typically using ba ba da ba 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 da ba da, and if you listen to any Brazil 66 music of Sergio Mendes, and you see the influence there. When the song got a second lease on life, at least for Gen Z, which I believe kind of started when Taylor Swift did her cover of it and kind of set the internet on fire. This is where I struck up my friendship with the songwriter, Allie Willis. Allie Willis, of course, famous for writing other songs like, she wrote the theme to Friends, I'll Be There For You. If you're a fan of Beverly Hills Cop, she wrote Stir It Up for...
Patti LaBelle.
Patti LaBelle, and I think she wrote Neutron Dance for the Pointer Sisters as well. Uh-huh. And if you're a fan or worshiper of the work of Jay Dilla, kind of some key samples of his from Herbie Hancock. Just Come Running to Me, which of course Slum Village used in Get This Money.
Hey, what you say? Get this money. If they say, what you gonna do today?
She wrote that as well. I think she told me that she was so shy in meeting Maurice White that she hid in the ladies' room of the studio, inside of a stall. But like in the movies where like people put their feet up, so when you look under the stall, you can't see their feet. She just sat there in a position, and eventually, like Maurice walked in and looked under, and he's like, "Well, I know you're in there, so you might as well put your feet down." And she like reluctantly came out the bathroom, and then I think she said that they wrote it in about 20 minutes and just used some placer words like body, like I'll fill it in later. And then, Maurice had told her that we're kind of accustomed to the body, so we'll just keep it there. Like it doesn't mean anything. But yeah, September, the most unlikely legacy song ever.
It's easy to sing along to the Badias too, because you don't need to memorize the lyrics.
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of weird that just coming off the heels of the Sly and the Family Stone doc I just did, I learned something about harmony and singing in unison. Oftentimes, like you'll have acts that want to show off their chops, like, hey, we're better than, and they'll do these intricate harmonies. But when you all sing in unison, that's more comforting to your listener because then they feel like, oh, I can sing with you because we're all singing the same note. And so, September is probably the most fun sing-along song. But it's also, for a group like Earth, Wind, and Fire, the most unlikely kind of signature song because there's so many songs in their arsenal that are significant for other reasons and like even bigger hits.
Yeah.
But when the smoke clears, it's like the people have spoken. Like the same can be said for Run DMC. Like they've done like historical important songs like Walk This Way and all that stuff. But when the smoke clears, like It's Tricky is going to be the signature Run DMC song.
It's tricky to rock around, that's right, on time, it's tricky. It's tricky.
even though that's the song that, like September and It's Tricky sort of have the same meaning. Like they didn't know back then September was just a throwaway song on a greatest hits record, and it did nice numbers, but it wasn't going to be like, this is the song that's going to define us this is our Billie Jean. Like, you just don't know. So
this song is going to be played at every wedding from here on out.
That's the gift. That's the gift that keeps on giving. Yes.
Why did you decide to take on this project? What was like interesting to you about Earth, Wind, and Fire? And like, let's go way back.
Okay.
Early in your life when you first became aware of them, and then how they became interesting to you as a documentary subject.
I don't know if I shared this story before. So my father and I, my father, who was a notable local doo-wop legend from the 50s, he was on Chess Records. The name of his group was Lee Andrews and the Hearts. He was Lee Andrews. 20 years after his career started, he was the first in the first wave of Nostalgia Cycle, where I will say Hendrix is responsible for Nostalgia Cycle when he told the organizers of Woodstock, hey, there's this group that sings songs from the 50s called Sha Na Na. I'll do it if you bring them too. And it was sort of like a novelty thing, like, hey, we're still singing songs from like 15 years ago. But it caught on at Woodstock, and then promoters realized like, oh, so people in their late 20s and early 30s still want to hear the music that they were listening to when they were 10 and 11. So suddenly in the 70s, you had like American Graffiti and Happy Days and Grease and all those 50s things. So my father was part of that, part of that cycle. But he also had a nightclub show, which basically meant that, yes, he was doing his 50s hits, but he also had to do contemporary hits. So every other week, my dad and I would binge shop maybe like $200 to $300 worth of records a week. Now, in the early 70s, that means that we're coming home with about 150 to like 200 records and 45s. Yeah. And so just pretty much I'll say that my childhood home was probably this times maybe 10, it was like 3,000 records in the house. Yeah. So I just remember one day in 1975, my grandmother had to be rushed to the hospital, but that was also on like binge shopping day.
Yeah.
So maybe 2 days after us visiting her in the hospital, Dad and I went to the record store and laid eyes on the That's the Way the World album cover. I just remember seeing them jumping in midair and trying to figure out how the camera captured them in action, with without their feet being on the ground. I didn't know about gravity. I was 4 years old. So that album just stood out to me because it just sounded different than every other album in my parents' collection.
It's interesting that you have this image of the cover in your head, and there's such a visual aspect, but then the music obviously grabs you.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us that were around the time of the 70s when we're trying to describe the feeling that we have of the music then, there's this other encompassing, indescribable feeling of listening to a record and studying the album cover and looking at it and reading the liner notes as you hear the music. And record releases were events back in the day. Like when Songs in the Key of Life came out, that was an event. Like the whole family sat by the stereo and just looked at the speakers it was like when you see movies of old-timey radio show where they're just listening to War of the Worlds, it was an event. So in my household, record releases were almost akin to movies coming out.
Okay, so that's how you became aware of them early on. Now, fast forward to how did this documentary sort of start to come together?
Coming from a band that sometimes gets misidentified. I've read many a press release on the Roots. I know that oftentimes when people are describing the Roots, they're describing the idea of the Roots, which kind of makes it their ideal version of the Roots, which is they think that we're these incense lighting, metaphysical, positive tofu eating, you know what I mean, like vegan, whatever that group is that you think is in your head. And I know that was the case for Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah. We would just sort of say like, oh, they're deep. And their deep comes in heavy air quotes, meaning that they're just on another spiritual level that you're not too aware of. And the more I started studying them, I too had a burning question, which was, how did this band trick their entire audience into eating their vegetables? You know what parents have to go through to get you to eat? Like, you won't get no dessert unless you eat all that asparagus. Like, Earth, Wind, and Fire is the healthy cereal that you don't choose, and you'd rather have Captain Crunch. Yeah. But you know you need that to survive for nutrients and all those things. So I always wondered, how do they trick their audience into positivity? And what I learned about Maurice's songwriting structure, like none of that was by accident and was very much by design, where even the way that Maurice and Philip Bailey sing with each other, they sing in like these character voices. Like if you were to imitate Maurice White, their sound everything, yeah, like it's almost like his version of a 70s street cat. Yeah. Where he just uses yow, yeah, what's up now? And he talk almost like a Mel Blanc, like if Bugs Bunny had some like street to him. And sometimes the words aren't clear, but what he's doing is he's subconsciously planting these seeds of positivity in your mind. And when you sing along with them, because the music is infectious, you by default are also singing affirmations. You know, they were very careful on the usage of proper nouns and pronouns. Like, they didn't want to limit it. So it wasn't a thing where it's like, girl, I love you so much, because then it's like, okay, you're only singing to half the audience. Yeah. So all the music, all the lyrics had to apply to their entire universal audience. And they were about positivity, but they wanted to do it in a way where it didn't seem boring or like, all right, here comes the goody two-shoes. So that to me is a trick they pulled off. And I wanted to use their story so that people have some sort of way to get through what we're living through now. Like, how do you stay in a positive mind state in the worst times ever? So Earth, Wind, and Fire will be our Wikipedia guide.
I was thinking about the voice thing when I was listening to this music yesterday on the plane. I was thinking about that voice, that character voice, and I was thinking about grunge music and how these different types of music come along where the vocal has this signature thing to it, and I was like wondering, like, why is that? And so
you have to sound like your audience.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. Like, they're in the beginning, they were well-meaning and even though they meant well, there was still a distance between them and their audience. And by the time they get to their fifth record, suddenly Maurice finds his voice more or less as a character. He's like part street preacher, part character, but you know, by the time they get to Open Our Eyes, like listen to the if you listen to Mighty Mighty, the opening song on Open Our Eyes, where they like, the words are, you walk around, why would you wear a frown just because little people are trying to put you down? What you need is a helping hand. And understand that everything is yours at your command, which, you know, a person will look at you like you're crazy if you're saying to me, like, that's their version of don't worry, be happy. Yeah. Which, of course, you know, as the listener, you might have an eye roll for it, like, here they come again trying to preach to me. So I think it's on purpose that they sing in these character voices. And it's just two people, Maurice and Philip, but it sounds like a group of them. Yeah. All that's by the design, to make you, the listener, not feel intimidated, that you too can join with them, because it must be 42 million of them singing together. Like, they sound like a group or a choir, but they sound like that's what Street Cat sounded like in the 70s, you know. Hey, let me put you on to something, young blood.
Maurice White, something that stands out to me is he's pulling these influences from all these different places. I mean, he grows up in one place, moves to another place, moves to another place. There's all these different types of musical things that are coming in. There's a line about how their combination of funk, jazz, classical chords, tribal African beats. Can you sort of speak to who he is and where his musical influences came from?
So, Maurice White, the particular angle that I used in telling the Maurice White story, first of all, he's using Earth, Wind, and Fire as his kind of Trojan horse, as his own personal army to get to you, the listener. But who Maurice White was as a human being this is a story of a 5-year-old orphan who somehow, some way, falls into metaphysics. Now, if you're given away by your mother, and if you're brokenhearted about it, and you don't have a father, and pretty much you could die at any moment, like he's left to fend for himself in Memphis, Tennessee, and a stranger next door takes him in as one of her own, and by the age of 7, he has this vision of what he calls metaphysics. And metaphysics is pretty much, you'll hear people try to give differentiate like religion versus spirituality. And for him, metaphysics was, instead of like praying and begging to a God where you don't know if God's out there listening to you, where he just, if he sits still, then he gets the answers. And he realizes that at an early age, that if I just sit still and silent, an idea or inspiration is going to come to me. And he's been doing that since 7. And somehow he just had this vision that one day he's going to put together a group of people, and when they perform, the entire world's going to love them. And he wants everything that they do to be intentional and to be positive. But he also realizes that you have to kind of put sugar with the medicine. And so, to his core, Maurice White was a sort of anointed with this gift of organizing, and he started out as a drummer. And when he graduated high school in Memphis, he moves to Chicago. And it's in Chicago where he really gets enlightened. He gets into jazz. He meets John Coltrane. Chicago's the epicenter of Chess Records, so he becomes a session musician. Eventually plays with Ramsey Lewis, at the time one of the most popular instrumental jazz musicians, like doing pop hits with Ramsey Lewis. And kind of at the height of his success, he realizes that he has to chase his dream. Like, who would leave the safety of a well-paying job, like damn near the rock star of the jazz world, for this unknown idea of putting together a 9-man group that's going to change the world? But just through examples, I show how he goes up against the odds. Like, he's playing to audiences that aren't ready for him yet, that will boo him. He's playing to demographics that aren't necessarily looking like he does, but he literally has no fear. He shows you that you must step up to your dream and fully immerse yourself in your dream. And so that's the story I want to tell.
So this is 1966. Ramsey Lewis.
Yeah, Wade in the Water.
Doesn't sound like Earth, Wind, and Fire.
But you know what it is? What's kind of revolutionary about this? There's a moment after 1965 in which, once the younger generation becomes of age, those who are born in the mid-50s that are now 10 years old, 11, 12, 13, like the youth will always determine what the sound of music's going to be. Yeah. And, there was resistance from the adults, like, very dismissive of kids and their bubblegum music and that sort of thing. Like, what's revolutionary about what we just heard was like jazz and rhythm, like, really was kind of frowned upon. Like, why would we lower ourselves from our kind of high horse level of intellect to just play with the common mortals down there want to listen to, their dance music and whatnot. So even like having a pop rhythm and kind of a soul or a funk to it was sort of seen as compromising jazz. In the beginning, jazz was dance music, big bands and all those things. And then, one day, I guess, musicians were like, well, we're going to speed this up, and speeding it up stops the dancing. And it's so fast where it's like, okay, now we just got to sit down and watch these guys and their self-indulgent solos. Like that, that's what jazz became, a musician sport once, like, bop came into play. And, by 1965, 66, 67, we were literally dancing in the streets. And so this is why the Ramsey Lewis Trio was so popular, because they had jazz sensibilities, but they were mixing it with their soul. And in the beginning, like now, this just sounds like, our grandparents' music, and that must have been the standard back then. No, this was like, to a jazz purist, this might have been like what EDM is to like music. Get that noise out of here. So, that was revolutionary music back then.
This is Chess Records. This is a sort of re-release of the song that's leaning into psychedelic music.
So there's an era of when Chess Records becomes Cadet.
Yeah.
Cadet was this vanity label offspring of Chess Records, in which is really catered to the love generation, to the hippies, again, the teenagers. And it's so weird that, yes, now, 60 years after the fact, we speak highly of all of our soul music pioneers and all those things. But you got to understand, man, like, in real time when this came out, like, this was controversial.
The cover says this is Howlin Wolf's new album. He doesn't like it.
Yes.
He didn't like his electric guitar at first either.
Yes. Read the title of the album one more time.
This is Howlin Wolf's new album, period. He doesn't like it, period. He didn't like his electric guitar at first either.
That to me is one of the most genius album titles. And that album cover is one of my favorite covers of all time, because even the way that the fonts look, it grabs you in its simplicity. But I mean, you have to understand that, and especially in light of how this pertains to Maurice White, again, a person that wanted to extract spirituality out of religion, really starting with like the music of Ray Charles. The second he started singing secular music, but it sounded like gospel, the black church was all up in arms. Like, we hear a song like I Got a Woman right now and be like, hey, that's standard Ray Charles.
She give me money when I'm in need. Yeah, she's a kind of...
But back then, that was almost like the equivalent of NWA's Fuck the Police. Like, the black church was angry.
Yeah.
And so the idea of Marshall Chess convincing his artists, like, hey, I know you're used to the Delta blues that you've been doing since the 30s and 40s and 50s, but to reach a new audience today, you got to put a little rhythm inside of your music. And similar to what Dylan went through in 65, the electric guitar, like, again, these things that we just now hear is like, oh, this is the standard of what it used to be. No, all this was heavily controversial. Yeah. Like, blues purists were like, oh no, he's selling out, trying to make dance music for these teeny boppers. And, even then, like, slowing down the funk. The slower the music was, the more they thought, like, oh no, you'll shake your hips, and that's of the devil, like shaking your hips and dancing sexy. Like, all of this was frowned upon. But, from my perspective, these were a lot of the records that, like, DJ Muggs we used for, like, the first two Cypress Hill records. Yeah. So to my generation, this is the foundation for some, like, the best hip hop that we heard, because there's a lot of stuff that's loopable. So, but yeah, man, great album title, great cover, and really, really great, like, some of their best music ever.
So I think it's interesting that this record is sort of also charting the journey that he took, the physical journey that he took, that Maurice White took around the country.
Yeah.
From down south,
Yes.
from the blues to Chicago, to the electrification, to California,
Yes.
to the psychedelic movement. This is produced by Charles Stepney.
Yes.
Who's Charles Stepney?
Charles Stepney was a composer, arranger, songwriter, producer that will really serve not only as a mentor to Maurice White, but really he was a father figure to him. Maurice White, again, was an orphan without mom or dad in the household. So everything that Maurice learned creatively, watching Stepney in the studio command the musicians, chart out string parts or whatever, make these arrangements. And also, Charles Stepney had absolutely zero limitations when it came to curving any idea that seemed too off the wall or eccentric for the music. Oftentimes, especially with black music, there was this kind of unspoken hands up, don't shoot approach to how it was executed. If you listen to music of Motown, very calculating how safe and how pleasant it sounded because we don't want to scare the people. We're coming into their households. And Charles Stepney really just let his freak flag just go wild, especially when he starts to work with the music of Rotary Connection. Of course, Maya Rudolph's mother, the great Minnie Riperton, is in Rotary Connection. And I would say Charles Stepney is what you, audio-wise, would think what a psychedelic trip would sound like to soul music. Dissonant chords, chromatic chords, and strange arrangements, and the engineering, very psychedelic. He was of his time, and he gave the playbook to Maurice White.
Is there a connection?
I believe that they're connected. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, a group on Columbia Records, signed by the great Clive Davis. There's a point where I think there's commonality with, and I don't think it's a mistake that even with Earth, Wind & Fire now touring with the group Chicago, there was a point where both Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Chicago were two groups that put emphasis on their horn section. So this is an example of jazz rock.
Yeah. Big
band arrangements to rock music. Yeah, I will say that there's a connection because that's 1968. In about 4 years, Clive Davis will sign Earth, Wind & Fire, who sort of discovers their inner horn section-led army, turning a 9-man group into a 14-man group. So that's a lot of per diem.
Make them like they used to.
Yeah, No, it's kind of weird because when the Roots first started, we started out as a trio, like buskers, a upright bass, a drummer, and a rapper. And I think it was maybe 2 years ago, I never took a head count of the Roots. And we were kind of like backstage ready to go on. I had my camera up, and I was just going in a circle. And maybe when I did the third rotation, I was like, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wait, we're 11. When did we become Earth, Wind & Fire? Like, it hit me maybe 3 years ago that we have more members in the Roots than Earth, Wind & Fire. Like, when I think of Earth, Wind & Fire, I think of an army of musicians. And somehow we just became that. But I'm world famous for, hey, that's dope. Want to join us?
Yeah.
So, we're the Noah's Ark of music culture.
So there's a challenge to having a band that's a certain size, like just in terms of the orchestration, in terms of using all these pieces in the right way. How does Earth, Wind & Fire sort of figure out how to shape all these different voices into something that works together?
Okay, so by example, James Brown proved that all instruments can be percussion. And, there's a big difference. like in Miles Davis's hands in 1968 when he's making the Bitches Brew album, you could have the same amount, volume-wise, the same amount of people and participants on a song. And in Miles Davis's case, you know, it's a very dense, packed sound. It's like a Jackson Pollock art piece where you just, you know, throw everything everywhere. Same year, in James Brown's case, if you have that amount of people in your arsenal, the trick is you give them very little to do. But if it's syncopated and structured as a well-oiled machine, it sounds like an army tank.
I don't care about your past.
So as a result, anything that's melodic is doing very small contributions to the rhythm, and the whole band sounds like percussion. And Maurice White once that came to be, and the song's called Cold Sweat by James Brown, that was the moment big bands and musicians realized that, oh, we can sound like an army if it's not like one lead person and then like there are 13 friends with them. They all, as an army, play the same thing, and very little of it, that's the more powerful you sound. So that's something that you have to wrap your head around, that Earth, Wind & Fire is like this 14-man group, and they have a lot of expansive ideas. Their music goes everywhere in their arrangements, especially when you listen to like their filler. If you listen to a song called like See the Light. That's on That's the Way of the World, or Spasmatic Movement. On the Open Our Eyes album, or even like Running. On the All in All album. You know, they go all over the place, but they go all over the place as a unit. And there's not one instrument that stands out. They all contribute their 5%, but they make it count, and they're a well-oiled machine. And when they sound well-oiled, they feel like an army, you know. But they're doing very little. It's my mom's favorite song. So this is a great example of how less is more.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Kalimba's song.
Uh-huh.
This is on their 1974 Open Our Eyes album. In 74, many of us did not know what a kalimba was. Kalimba's a thumb piano that Maurice White discovered in his world travels with the Ramsey Lewis Trio. So first of all, you know, if an Earth, Wind & Fire song is in the key of A minor, you already know you're about to get a kalimba solo. So each band has their signature key. Stevie Wonder is an E flat minor key because all the black keys are in the, you know, Superstition, You Haven't Done Nothing, I Wish, Skeletons, Do Yourself a Favor. All those Stevie Wonder songs are, there's no wrong notes when you hit all the black notes at the same time. So Stevie Wonder's keys in E flat minor. James Brown prefers D minor. So at least 20 plus of his top 10 hits were in the key of D. Earth, Wind & Fire was an A group. Weird enough, their biggest song in A, which is September, does not have a kalimba solo. So that's the one A song in their arsenal that has no kalimba solo, which shows you like kind of what an afterthought of this song was. But what's brilliant about Kalimba song is that this shows you how less is more works and how powerful less is more is. Now, as a drummer, you know, if you think of a drummer, I think most people that grew up in the 90s, if you think of drumming, 9 times out of 10, you're probably thinking of Dave Grohl's intro to like Teen Spirit. So in our mind, it's like, together, and the whole like, you know, playing this full power thing. If you listen to Kalimba song, Ralph Johnson's playing a very simple boo, ka, boo, ka, It's almost like a Charlie Watts. You know, like relaxed Charlie Watts looks at when he's playing with the Rolling Stones, like he can't be bothered.
Yeah.
That's literally the effort that it takes to do that rhythm, which if you're a drummer, your brain's telling you, oh, you got to do more. You got to do more to justify your existence here, which is why, like today, a lot of drummers, and we call them, they call it gospel chops. Like if you look up, just go to YouTube and look up gospel chop drumming. And those are drummers that are like influenced by like, this fast like fusion jazz thing where you got to hit everything. Like Frank Zappa, like music, like fill the space. But in this case, Ralph Johnson has to do almost next to nothing. Like it's very easy just to do boom, cap, boom, cap, boom, cap. But what winds up happening is Verdine White's bass is also doing what the kick drum does, right? Al McKay, and Al McKay is the secret sauce inside. If there is a Michael of the group, as far as musicians, like a standout person, or LeBron or Michael Jordan, Al McKay would be that person. Al McKay is given the freedom to flex a little bit, and his rhythm guitar is really doing what the hi-hat should be doing. So your brain is thinking like, ooh, that drummer's getting down. But really, no. The drummer's just a traffic cop, playing very simple. What the hi-hat should be doing, that's what Al McKay's doing with his guitars. What Verdine White is doing with his bass, and as far as adding accents to the kick drum, it makes them sound bigger than what they are. Like in your mind's processing like, woo, they were getting down. But no, they were doing something very simplistic. But because they're doing it together, it feels like an army. So it's a whole psychological thing. And it gives space for Maurice White to do his magical work playing the kalimba. Like Larry Dunn's keyboard is actually mixed very low, which gives Maurice White a spotlight or a space. So even like having that knowledge so early in the game, they introduced a new kind of sonic sophistication sound that I don't think is afforded to other groups of that era, because normally 9 times out of 10, you're in a cheap studio. This might work. These compressors don't sound as good as da-da-da-da, or which engineer is going to draw the short straw to. And hip-hop was like this as well. Like a lot of this stuff is done at cheap studios, which is why hip-hop is so raw sounding. But in this case, like Earth, Wind & Fire was highly aware of how sophisticated they wanted their sound to sound. So that's by design.
I once had a life, or rather, life had me.
Hell of an opening.
It's hard to stop it.
Funkadelic. Yeah, in any music phenomenon, there's the good versus evil thing. There's the Old versus the New Testament. There's Marvel versus DC. There's Rolling Stones versus the Beatles. And in our world, it was Earth, Wind & Fire versus P-Funk. I think George himself would joke that Earth, Wind & Fire was Harvard, and P-Funk was Howard, But both groups were equally metaphysical.
Yeah.
And both of them use different approaches to disarm the listener from recognizing that they're being educated. Well, the number one trick that Funkadelic used in their arsenal was humor. And I believe that George Clinton's pen game is, without no doubt, he's one of the smartest songwriters in existence. All of his lyrics are either idioms. Like he's used every idiom under the sun. Any terms like you better wake up and smell the coffee. You better any of those things. Like you don't let the doorknob hit you with the Lord split you. In like any idioms, and much like Earth, Wind & Fire. Now, Earth, Wind & Fire would hide their positivity and their messages in these voices that were more like street characters. You know what I mean? Whereas George Clinton really took advantage of the Greek chorus singing in unison, and minor parts leading to a bigger picture. So a lot of his lyrics and a lot of his choruses are interchangeable. The average songwriter will just have one bridge. No, George Clinton always makes sure that there's like 5 to 6 parts of a song that will stand out. So if you're not going to sing the lyrics, then you're going to sing the chorus. If you're not going to sing the chorus, we're going to have a sha-la-la part where there's no lyrics that you could do. But same thing for Earth, Wind, and Fire. You can use lyrics. You can use the cha-la-la, ba-de-ya-ba-ba-ba-ba part. And, you know, both groups developed early in the Midwest, Detroit for Funkadelic, Chicago for Earth, Wind, and Fire. They had one show together in the early 70s, I believe late 72 or early 73. And because of there's what we call respectability politics. I guess now we can say like a political correctness about Earth, Wind, and Fire, very proper, we're sophisticated, that sort of approach. Whereas Funkadelic was in a constant state of zero fucks given. And so as a result, Earth, Wind, and Fire opened up for P-Funk and got blown off the stage. And, you know, again, whenever a setback hits the band, usually people cave into the pressure and panic.
Yeah.
And Maurice White's approach to everything was like after every show, he'd sit in his bedroom silent for an hour and just meditate. And he realized the answer was Al McKay. We need one more member of the group that will help emphasize the funk in a way. Now, you know, Funkadelic is a guitar-based band. They're a counterpart group. They're the same group. Funkadelic was guitars, P-Funk was horns. But they got blown off the stage by a guitar player, Eddie Hazel, who's God. You know, I mean, all of George Clinton's guitar players were God level. But in this case, Eddie Hazel. And Maurice's answer to that was Al McKay. And Al McKay, once he joins the group in 1973, they will hit their stride in these strings of hits that will define the group through the next 7 years.
You're a shining star, no matter who you are, shining bright to see.
It's always changing.
Yeah. You know, all right, so you know what just happened? We just gave an example of why that song works. Because the tension in music is always music and lyrics.
Uh-huh.
The most important and the most dangerous part of that song are the lyrics. So in order for the lyrical intention to land with its listener, you might have to trick your audience. And in this case, the song has to be so relentlessly danceable and funky. Instantly, we started with, right? And this is also where the band realizes the power of the messaging and how they delivered to it. Maurice White wasn't singing. I mean, he started in Open Our Eyes, but he's singing in that character voice.
Ow.
Yeah, dreams take you very far. Yeah, yeah. It's again, that's his gospel preacher voice, and that's by design. I mean, literally, you know, the first 4 lines are straight from Walt Disney. When you wish upon a star, it will take you very far. You know, and again, if it's delivered in that sort of well-intentional, you know, Disney way, turn the radio off. Like, that's corny. Like, I don't want to hear no Disney stuff from 7 years old. But literally, the first lines of the song is, you know, if you have a desire in life to succeed, just say it out loud and it will happen to you. You're a winner and you will go far in life. And again, I don't know why we're averse to good news and positivity often because as human beings, we don't want to be heartbroken. You know, it's too much of a risk. And what Philip is saying, what's in your life that's not so clear. Like basically, faith is the idea of believing in something that hasn't happened yet. And again, the genius of the song is the fact that they are really, I mean, for the first time, like music really, besides Sly and the Family Stone, like Sly and the Family Stone's version of this is like, you can make it if you try.
You can make it if you try. You can make it if you try.
Sly and the Family Stone more or less comes off like a cheerleading squad. Rah, rah, rah. You can make it. You can make it. We can do this. But making people feel positive, especially like in the middle of you know, the after effects of Vietnam.
Yeah.
Like we're going through hell.
Yeah.
To release this music while we're going through hell was such a risk for an unproven group. This will be their first #1 single. This will be their first top 10 single. This is their first hit. And to put all their faith into delivering a message of positivity without their audience knowing it.
There's an interview with the Obamas in this documentary, and there's a part where President Obama is like reflecting on seeing these guys and saying, if I saw what they were doing,
Yes.
and I thought, wow, if that's possible, what could I do? It's an insane quote.
When look, I'm going to tell you, I had 2 older cousins. The one thing I'm like, I asked my mom this when I finished the film, like, you know, for 2 people that were like hell bent on me having like this musical enlightenment in my life, the one thing you guys never did was take me to shows. Now, mind you, our job was giving shows. So I remember seeing like one of Jackie Wilson's last performances before his coma. But I found out in '76 that like, oh, this is oldies music. Like my teachers were like, well, this is out when I was a kid, Amir. And I realized that my parents weren't putting me onto contemporary music. So the thing is that my cousins went to the 1977 All in All tour, of which this is when the theatrical side of Earth, Wind & Fire is becoming developed.
Magic show.
Yeah, this is where Henning and Copperfield are putting their shows together.
Yeah.
And they're levitating, they're exploding, there's you know, blowing up pyramids and smoke and all this thing. Like high theater was not a thing. And so they came home that night, and you know, I'm 8 years old, and my cousin Diane is like describing like 9 tubes came down, and they came down in these tubes, and there was smoke everywhere, and da 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 da, and it was almost like she saw aliens or was on an acid trip or whatever. But she was never the same after that concert. She was never the same after that concert, and you know, she was one of the cousins that did well in life or whatever. And every person that I remember describing to me what it was like to attend an Earth, Wind & Fire concert between 1975 and like 1981, all those people went on to do like greater things in life. But yeah, Earth, Wind & Fire disciples, there was this osmosis effect that made them. And I believe it's because of the subliminal, subconscious positivity spread throughout their music and caused these people to want to do great things in life. So, you know, I too thought like, okay, well, I won't be the same after this movie's done, and even I'm not the same anymore. Like I'm done the movie and I'm still reading all the Napoleon Hill books and every book that Maurice White ever read, like I'd read 2 or 3 times over. So it's still not over for me now that the movie's over.
Last one.
Okay.
Well, either this or because they're both kind of interesting. Like
I can knock both with one stone. Earth, Wind & Fire, in my opinion, especially in black music, the distinct position that Earth, Wind & Fire holds is also a space that Stevie Wonder, Sly and the Family Stone, and Prince also hold, which is I personally believe that their greatness isn't defined by the hit singles. You know, an artist like Michael Jackson will make you remember Beat It, Billie Jean.
Yeah.
My favorite Earth, Wind & songs are not the singles. My favorite Stevie Wonder songs are not the singles. My favorite Prince songs, Sly and the Family Stone songs are not the hit singles. Those are the last things I gravitate towards. The filler, to me, is what really defines their genius. Now, in this particular case, and it goes to show you that music really is a Polaroid snapshot of where you are in life. I'll give you an example. Like as many times as people have like fond memories of hearing like Alanis Morissette's "Ironic."
It's like rain.
That will forever be the first song that I had a car accident to. So I'm forever seeing us skidding on I-95, barely missing an 18-wheeler truck in the snow, hearing, it's like rain. It's like all this panic, which is why, like, when you're in the car, like, you turn the volume down. If anything, if you get pulled over, like, you don't want to get your ass beat to a soundtrack. You know what I mean? So, that said, Philip Bailey has less than fond memories of this particular period of Earth, Wind & Fire. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, these are like your two biggest hits ever. Why would you ever hate this period? He is not fond of the time period because he wishes, and him and the band also stated that they wish that they were more involved in the creative process of Earth, Wind & Fire albums, the band that bears their name, you know. And they really weren't given agency in terms of that type of creativity. So for him, it's less than rosy memories. For me, though, I remember hearing Boogie Wonderland, School Shopping for 4th grade. I mean, that's a good problem to have, where even your second biggest single won't be in anyone's top 10 list of favorite Earth, Wind & Fire songs, yet and still you brought it, but it's not your favorite song. So that's a great problem to have. That means that their entire canon, their entire output has resonated with their audience, not just the singles. Let's Groove, however, I will forever have the greatest childhood memories to it. The day that the Rays album came out, or the day that that single came out, I remember it being a snow day. I went to school in downtown Philadelphia, and I lived in West Philly. So, you know, there's no feeling like the feeling when the principal says at 10 a.m., you know, we're going to let school out early because it's snow day and it's going to be a storm. So get home safely, students. And I had my lunch money on me. And back then, records were $5.99, so you're paying like $6.35. I happened to have like maybe a 10 on me. And when school was over, went to Sound of Market Street and purchased the Rays album. And, you know, we didn't go home immediately. We went to the arcade and all that stuff, and it started snowing bad. And, okay, it's getting bad. We better get home. So I remember us having like one of the greatest snowball fights. I was using the Rays album as sort of like a shield. And got home, and, you know, my parents weren't home because, again, snow day. I remember making hotcakes, like making breakfast for my friends. I knew how to make the greatest breakfast chef of all time, and listening to that album. So I have fond memories of the Rays album. And to this day, Philip and I always have this inside joke. Like, the album he hates the most of his canon, which is also one of his most successful records, is one of my favorite albums of all time. And Let's Groove was an inescapable Earth, Wind & Fire song that came in the nick of time. And little did I know that would be one of their last like major hits of the era. But it's timeless. You can play it to this day and it still works.
The movie's out now.
Yes.
It's called Earth, Wind & Fire, To Be Celestial
versus That's the Way to the World. Yes.
Great title.
With all my titles have these like long, wordy titles. And being a fan of Rocky and Bullwinkle,
yeah,
all their episodes would end on a cliffhanger. You know, stay tuned next week for da-da-da-da-da or da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, that's the weight of the world. Maybe it's my nod to George Clinton's use of puns. Yeah. But, yeah, that's the weight of the world is, to me, a very apropos description of the burden that Maurice White had to carry, all the pain that he had inside, and all the creativity that he had inside, and all the dreams that he had inside to make this band that changed all of our lives. Like he said, I want to change lives, and he's changing my life right now. And, you know, I've only worked with him once long ago. So, yeah, it's on HBO, and I want you, all you creatives and fans and music lovers and people that sort of need an answer on how to navigate through life, this is the movie for you.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Well done.
I appreciate
all
it.
your movies are amazing.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. Let's go downstairs.
Let's do this. All right.
Part 2. The Trackstar Podcast is a presentation of public opinion created by me, Jack Coyne, Kieran Coyne, and Henry Cornaros. Produced by Haley Sobel. Edited by Ryan Durgans. Theme and original composition by Kieran Coyne. Mixing by Devin Klein. Our agent is Joanna Orland at UTA. Thanks for listening. See you next Wednesday.